Something big just shook the landscape of the AFC East, and if you're a fan of the New England Patriots, you probably felt the ripple effect immediately. News broke that the Buffalo Bills pulled off a move to strengthen their offense, landing wide receiver DJ Moore in a trade that sent a second-round pick in the 2026 draft to Chicago, along with a late pick swap. On the surface, it looks like Buffalo simply upgraded its receiving core. But when you look a little deeper, the consequences of that deal stretch far beyond just one team adding a talented wide receiver. Because the moment that trade became official, it quietly shifted the entire market for elite wide receivers around the league. And that's where things started to get complicated for New England. For weeks now, the Patriots have been connected to rumors involving star wide receiver A.J. Brown. The team has clearly been searching for a true number one option, someone who can transform the passing game and give the offense the kind of explosive presence it has been missing. The challenge, though, has always been the asking price. Before this trade, there was at least some belief that the price for A.J. Brown might eventually drop. The Patriots were reportedly interested, but they weren't comfortable with the cost that Philadelphia might demand. The strategy seemed pretty simple: wait it out. Let time pass. Maybe the market cools down. Maybe negotiations soften. And maybe, just maybe, New England could bring in a top-tier receiver without sacrificing a first-round pick. But then Buffalo stepped in and changed the entire equation. By giving up a second-round pick to acquire DJ Moore, the Bills essentially reset the value for high-level wide receivers across the league. Because when teams around the league see a player of Moore's caliber go for that kind of price, it immediately impacts how other front offices evaluate their own stars. And when you start comparing Moore to A.J. Brown side by side, the difference becomes pretty clear. Both receivers are 28 years old, which already makes the comparison interesting. But the production tells a much bigger story. A.J. Brown finished the season with 78 receptions and more than 1,000 receiving yards, continuing to prove that he is one of the most dominant wide receivers in the entire National Football League. DJ Moore, meanwhile, recorded 50 catches and just under 700 yards. Solid numbers, no doubt, but not exactly the same level of impact. Even when you break down other parts of their performance, Brown still holds the edge. He produced more touchdowns and remained the focal point of his offense in crucial moments. Moore may have had a slightly higher yards per catch average, but when you talk about consistent playmaking, physical dominance, and the ability to take over games, A.J. Brown has clearly established himself as the superior receiver. And that is exactly why the Bills trade creates such a headache for New England. If a player with Moore's production costs a second-round pick, what does that mean for a receiver who is widely considered better in nearly every major category? The answer is pretty obvious. The asking price for A.J. Brown just went up. What once might have been a negotiation centered around a second-round pick and maybe additional compensation has now likely turned into a conversation that starts with a first-round pick. And for a team like the Patriots, that is a massive difference. First-round selections are incredibly valuable, especially for a franchise that is trying to rebuild its roster and add young talent in multiple areas. Giving up that kind of draft capital is not something organizations take lightly, particularly when they are still shaping the long-term direction of the team. Yet at the same time, the need for a true number one wide receiver in New England is impossible to ignore. The offense has struggled to consistently create explosive plays, and without a dominant pass catcher on the outside, defenses have been able to limit the Patriots' ability to stretch the field. That is why the idea of adding someone like A.J. Brown has generated so much excitement. He is the type of receiver who changes how defenses prepare. Corners have to respect his physicality. Safeties have to account for his deep threat ability. And quarterbacks suddenly have a reliable target who can win contested catches and break tackles after the reception. But now the big question becomes whether the Patriots are willing to pay the new price. Reports around the league suggest that Philadelphia would only consider moving Brown if a first-round pick is involved. And after seeing what Buffalo just paid for Moore, it is hard to imagine the Eagles lowering that demand. In fact, if anything, the leverage has shifted even more in their favor. From New England's perspective, the situation has become a classic risk versus reward scenario. On one hand, surrendering a first-round pick is a serious commitment, especially when the roster still needs help in other areas. On the other hand, opportunities to acquire elite wide receivers in their prime do not come around very often. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating for Patriots fans. The front office has been searching for offensive firepower, and Brown represents exactly that. He is proven, productive, and capable of transforming an entire passing attack. But thanks to Buffalo's latest move, the path to making that happen just became far more expensive. What makes the situation even more frustrating for New England supporters is the timing. The Patriots were hoping patience might work in their favor. Instead, a division rival stepped in and potentially slammed that window shut. And now the debate is officially on. Is A.J. Brown worth giving up a first-round pick? Or should the Patriots hold on to their draft capital and continue building the roster through other avenues while searching for a different solution at wide receiver? Because after what just happened with Buffalo and DJ Moore, the market has spoken, and the value of elite wide receivers around the league may never look quite the same again. While the conversation around wide receivers continues to dominate the headlines, the New England Patriots are quietly working behind the scenes to address another area that became impossible to ignore last season: the offensive line. Anyone who watched the team closely knows that protecting the quarterback and creating consistency in the trenches has become a priority. And now a new name has entered the conversation that could potentially help stabilize that group. The Patriots recently hosted a visit with offensive tackle Jedrick Wills, a former top 10 pick who is looking to reset his career after a frustrating stretch with injuries. Wills spent the entire 2025 season recovering from a serious knee injury, but he is only 26 years old and still believes he has plenty of football left to play. That combination of youth and previous high-level pedigree is exactly why multiple teams around the league are taking a closer look at him, and New England appears to be one of the organizations exploring the possibility. For the Patriots, this move makes a lot of sense when you examine the current depth of their offensive line. The group showed flashes at times, but injuries and inconsistency made it difficult to maintain stability throughout the season. In a league where offensive line continuity can make or break an offense, that kind of uncertainty simply cannot continue if the team wants to compete at a higher level. Wills entered the National Football League with enormous expectations after being selected in the top 10 of the draft. His athletic ability and physical tools immediately stood out, and there was a belief that he could become a cornerstone tackle for years to come. However, his career has been a mixture of promising moments and frustrating setbacks. Injuries have limited his ability to stay on the field consistently, and that has prevented him from fully developing into the dominant presence many expected early in his career. When he last saw extended action during the 2024 season, he appeared in only 5 games before being sidelined again. During that stretch, the performances were solid but not spectacular. His pass protection showed some reliability, and he allowed only a small number of sacks during that period. However, the overall consistency was still something teams would like to see improve. From New England's perspective, the potential signing would likely be more about depth and competition rather than immediately handing him a starting role. The Patriots understand that building a strong offensive line requires more than just 5 starters. Injuries happen throughout every season, and having capable backups who can step into the lineup without the entire system collapsing is crucial. That is where Wills could provide value. If he returns to full health, his experience and athletic profile could make him an intriguing option to rotate into the lineup when necessary. He could also serve as insurance in case other plans along the offensive line do not unfold as expected. One of the key questions surrounding the Patriots' offensive line moving forward involves the long-term outlook at tackle. Morgan Moses has been a veteran presence, but his future with the team is not guaranteed beyond the short term. At the same time, depth behind the starting group remains thin, and that has forced the front office to explore several different possibilities during the offseason. When you look at the current depth chart, it becomes clear why the team is evaluating additional options. Beyond the projected starters, the Patriots simply do not have many proven players who can confidently step into major roles if injuries occur. That lack of depth can quickly become a serious problem over the course of a long season. Bringing in someone like Wills would at least provide another experienced option. Even if he does not immediately claim a starting position, his presence could strengthen the overall competition during training camp and push the entire unit to perform at a higher level. But the Patriots are not only focusing on the offensive side of the ball. At the same time, they are evaluating offensive line help. The team is also exploring ways to strengthen the defensive front, particularly when it comes to generating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. That search has led to growing interest in an edge rusher who has quietly developed into one of the more intriguing defensive players available. Boy Mafe has emerged as a name linked to New England as the offseason unfolds. The pass rusher made a strong impression during his early seasons, especially during a breakout campaign where he recorded 9 sacks and consistently disrupted opposing offenses. His combination of length, athleticism, and motor allowed him to create pressure even when he was not finishing plays with sacks. However, his role shifted after changes within the Seattle defensive system. With adjustments to the defensive line rotation and new personnel entering the picture, May found himself playing fewer snaps than before. Despite that reduced role, he continued to show flashes of the same disruptive ability whenever he was on the field. For teams searching for pass rush help, that kind of potential remains extremely appealing. Edge rushers are among the most valuable defensive players in the league, and organizations are constantly searching for players who can consistently pressure quarterbacks. Even rotational pass rushers with upside can command significant contracts during free agency because of how important that role has become. The Patriots understand that reality very well. Last season, they demonstrated a willingness to invest in defensive linemen who may not have been full-time starters, but still possess the physical tools to thrive in the right system. That philosophy could easily apply to someone like Mafe. When he is on the field, his ability to collapse the pocket and disrupt passing lanes stands out. Quarterbacks often feel his presence even when he does not register a sack, and those subtle pressures can completely alter the rhythm of an offense. For a defensive scheme that values versatility and constant pressure, adding a player with that skill set could make a significant difference. There is also another interesting layer to this situation. Reports indicate that New England previously explored the possibility of acquiring Mafe before the trade deadline during the regular season. That suggests the Patriots have already been monitoring his development for quite some time. If the front office had interest back then, it would not be surprising to see them become aggressive now that he could be available in a different capacity. For a team trying to rebuild its defensive identity, adding another capable pass rusher could help reshape the entire front seven. The Patriots already have several players who can contribute, but the modern National Football League demands constant pressure from multiple angles. Rotations are deeper, defensive lines are fresher, and teams that can send waves of pass rushers tend to create the most problems for opposing offenses. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Patriots Hub and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our New England Patriots. And don't be shy, share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. A growing murmur around the league suggests the off-season strategy of the New England Patriots may be far more aggressive than anyone expected. According to an insider familiar with internal discussions, the franchise is quietly preparing the framework for what could become one of the most significant trades of the upcoming cycle in the National Football League. If the whispers prove accurate, the move would be so substantial that traditional roster-building tools like free agency could temporarily take a backseat. Sources close to the situation say the Patriots front office has spent recent weeks exploring scenarios involving high-value assets, possibly including premium draft capital and established veterans. The idea, according to those same voices, would be to reshape a key portion of the roster in one sweeping maneuver rather than through several smaller signings. League executives who have heard the same rumblings describe the approach as uncharacteristically bold, especially for a franchise historically associated with calculated, incremental roster adjustments. What fuels the speculation is the unusual level of communication reported between New England and multiple teams believed to be considering major resets of their own. While no concrete names have surfaced publicly, scouts around the league claim that conversations have centered on players capable of immediately altering the competitive ceiling of a team. The Patriots, in this scenario, would be positioning themselves to strike the moment a rival front office decides to move a star. Privately, some agents believe the strategy explains why the organization has appeared relatively quiet in preliminary free agency chatter. If a blockbuster trade truly sits at the center of their off-season blueprint, conserving financial flexibility and draft resources would be essential. Of course, rumors swirl every off-season, and many never materialize into real deals. Yet the consistency of the whispers has caught the attention of executives and analysts alike. Should the Patriots pull the trigger on the kind of move insiders are hinting at, the ripple effects across the league could be immediate, reshaping the market and turning what looked like a routine offseason into a dramatic power shift. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our New England Patriots, be sure to subscribe to Patriots Hub and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.